Hello everyone, my name is Jen and welcome to the Book Refuge and welcome to week number 1 of me wrapping up my yearly reading. This is going into our 3rd year of me doing weekly wrap-ups. If you're new here, if you've just found me, I like to tell you about every single book I read, and because that can be upwards of 500 books, or it has been for the last 3 years, I started doing these weekly wrap-ups where I talk about everything, because monthly wrap-ups were just getting obscene and bi-monthly wrap-ups were still not enough, and so I do weekly wrap-ups to the best of my ability. I was very proud that in 2022 I only missed, I think, 4 Sundays that I dropped this, and I had some doubles, although I will have a double coming up very soon because I do have vacation planned to Orlando Studios, Florida with my sister, and I will be gone for I think a total of 8 days just with travel and stuff and everything. But if you are subscribed to my channel and you hit that bell, you will get notified when I upload. And I don't just upload my weekly reading wrap-ups, I upload 2 to 3 other videos as well. I also have a Patreon and channel memberships. Channel memberships in general get you early access to videos. Like, I'm filming this on a Saturday. The people who are channel members at a certain level or above get this today as soon as it's uploaded. And then I have patrons where I do a weekly vlog that isn't just a reading vlog, it's behind the scenes in my life. I am a full-time creator, so sometimes there's some pretty fun stuff. So anyway, that's enough of self-promotion. Let's get into it, because I had a great first week of the year, okay? I did something, the vlog just went up the other day, where I read my first 5 books of the year, and those ones I went in more depth about. So those books I won't talk about as much in this, because I want you to go check out that video. It was a lot of work and it was a lot of fun, but of course I'll still tell you how I feel about it here. Now, 2 things before we get started. We have some new channel members and patrons to welcome as well. We have a new patron. Her name is Lori M. Welcome, Lori. Thank you so much for choosing to support me here. It means so much to me. And then we have a new channel member, Annie J, who joined at the Fated Friend level. So welcome. So now that we have done that, we'll go ahead and dive in to chatting about everything. So 2 books that didn't show up in my first reads of the year, but I actually read first, were 2 fanfics that I didn't end up fitting into my end of December, so I just tacked them onto this. I was just in the mood for fanfic so hard, and I knew that I have a really hefty TBR for January. All things that I'm very excited for, no lie, but I knew it would be a pretty hefty TBR, so I wanted to take some time for me and read some fics. So I read Miles Away from Any Warm by Annette Poudre. I don't know how to pronounce this any more than that. This one is a triad with Lucius Malfoy, Severus Snape, and Hermione Granger. It takes place during its 6th year, and Hermione had, in this case, gotten left behind by Ron and Harry while they are working on some stuff for Dumbledore. And Hermione gets kidnapped in the middle of the night by Snape and Lucius. And we think things are going to be really bad, but actually both Snape and Lucius are traitors to Voldemort, and they're actually on our side, and they end up taking Hermione with, and they go searching out Horcruxes because Ron and Harry aren't doing it the right way. So it ends up being an alternate 6th and 7th year, and she slowly falls for both of them. So I had a pretty good time with this one. It was MFM and not MMF, and it was miscategorized on AO3, which it's fine. I know not everyone understands how I feel about the different kinds of menages that there are, and so I really wanted one where Severus and Lucius loved each other, that they didn't just care about sharing someone, that they actually wanted to be together. So I felt a little bit left down in that. So I gave this one 4 stars. It was a 2.5 on my Spice rating, and there was a trigger warning for violence, danger, and kidnapping. Then I also read Forced Beginnings by O'Killy, and this was a Snape and Hermione, and this is one of my favorite kind of setups in a fanfic that I've read so far, and that's when there is a marriage law or some kind of like procreation law that happens where usually it's Hermione needing to marry a wizard who is not Ron to produce children. And in this case, she's being forced into a scenario where her and Snape need to get married, and they have to be married for 5 years or so. But they aren't planning to have any children because then it would be too difficult for them to divorce at the end of this time. But the ministry has kind of sort of put this like spell out there on everyone who's doing this where no forms of birth control will work for them, which was very sneaky of them to do, but that's what they do to make sure that they're getting what they want out of these unions, because they have a feeling that a lot of people might try to cheat their way out. So this one was another really cute one. They were just really sweet. There isn't anything triggering about this one at all. It was 4-star and it was a 2 on the spice scale. Okay, then we get into the books I read during my little reading vlog, and the first one that I took on was the one that I am happy to eat some crow about. And I mean, not really so much like eat crow about this book because I just didn't have any reason to try this book, but I have said many times that I didn't want to read any more Rena Kent, and I want to be clear before we talk about this, because I did really like this book. I don't want a bunch of suggestions of Rena Kent's, okay? Like, please don't put it in my suggestion box, whatever. I am tiptoeing my way back into her because I've read 10 of her books. I already had read, I think, both books or series that were about the parents in this, because this is a series, The Legacy of Gods, that it is about like the kids and even grandkids in some case of other series. Like right in the front there is a family tree, and I was like making marks on it. And I've read quite a few of these. The reason why I don't read Rena Kent anymore, or didn't before now, is because I had read 10 of her books and I only really liked 2 of them, and all the rest were just kind of like meh, like they weren't working for me. So I don't need a bunch of recommendations about what to read. And I'm sorry, I'm being a little bit snotty about it, but I get bombarded with her. I know people want me to love her, and I'm more willing to, but I'm also a stubborn hoe, okay? I am a stubborn hoe, and sometimes you can lead the bitch to water, but you can't make her drink it, okay? And so this one, though, I read because specifically some people who were reading it, I trust them very much, and they were making some comparisons that I was like, I've been let down before, but I'm gonna try it. And so that's why I did it as part of this vlog, where it was like the incentive, and I'd actually got both God of Malice and God of Pain in a sale. There was like buy one get one half off, and so I bought both of them, and my plan was if I didn't like it to just sell it or give it away or whatever. And I'm really glad that I did, because I enjoyed this. Now let's get into the fun part. Okay, so I've put the disclaimer out. Please don't shove a bunch down my throat. I've probably even read some of the ones you're talking about and didn't like them. And if I want to read more, I will. Like, what's great is she has audiobooks for most of her books, which is excellent. And I'll get to it if I want to. But I can't be pushed into Rena Kent. You'll just make me dig my heels in. And there's a lot of friends who have been patiently waiting for me to finally pick it up. So don't be the person who ruins it, okay? Okay, I've bitched at you enough. Again, let me get back to it. Okay, so I gave this book 5 stars. I had so much fun with it. Sorry, I have my notes right here. And if you watch said reading vlog, I go into a lot of the things that I loved about this. So again, not going to go fully into that. If you want, you can watch the vlog up here. I talk maybe 20 minutes about what I love that this author was doing. But just to set it up for people in case you haven't read it, this takes place at these like dueling colleges that are near each other. And so there is like, I think it even says, there's like the Royal Elite University and there's King's U College, and they're all by a bunch of elitist kids, and some of them who are involved in the underworld. Like there's mafia kids that go here. It's one of these, okay? It's scary. And our heroine starts off this book where she's having a dark moment. A friend of hers has committed suicide, and she's maybe thinking about it too. She's definitely had suicidal ideation before. She has mental health issues and struggles. I think struggles is the better word to say, but like she does have a therapist, but she's having a dark moment. And Killian comes across her. He has his camera. He likes to take photos. And he is a psychopath, and a legit one. Not one who has childhood trauma. Not one who has whatever. Like, he legit was born, like, without empathy. He's one of those. Even though he's from a very loving family. And he does love family. I actually watched a very interesting interview about psychopaths the other day. And it's the lacking empathy part that makes them so scary. Because they can love. They can have great relationships, but it's when they decide to do something, they don't have remorse or guilt. They will just do what's best for them or do what they want, and they're not really going to get hung up about it if you don't like it. And I think that's a very interesting thing, because one of the things that always gets brought up about psychopaths in the book itself is that they can't love. And particularly that's a part of the like the Only James series, is that they can't love. And I mean, granted, I think it's also debated by psychologists and like that, because since psychopathy can't be diagnosed, like it isn't something you're diagnosed with, there isn't like a perfect answer. There's people who are going to be debating. But anyway, I like that thought of, yes, they can love, but they also don't feel guilt or shame or empathy. And if they don't care about you, they have no reason to be kind to you. So in this scenario, we start out with a situation where she's at the edge of a cliff and he's there with his camera and he scares her and she almost falls over. And so he grabs a hold of her. And the only way he agrees to save her is if she will offer him something more interesting, which in his case is pleasure. And he's actually a bit surprised that he's turned on by her and her fear. And a little something extra he sees in her eyes. She's not completely afraid of him, but she doesn't know who this is at the time. And after the event, which yes, it is a sexual assault, and yes, it is a sexual assault a little bit like Carter Mahoney, but I'm not making these comparisons. Like, I think some people who like Untouchable might like this. This is a different man. Carter Mahoney is not like this kind of a psychopath, okay? I don't even really think that he is after how many times I read that book. But anyway, people will find similar things that they love, and I definitely understand the comparison, and I support the comparison, but I caution everyone, there is no book like Untouchable. I just had some people ask me again the other day because I made a video where I talked about Untouchable quite a bit. I have a million of those videos. I talk about them all the time. There is no book like Untouchable. However, this book reminded me of it, but he's a little crazier, and I enjoy this because it's not so much that Killian is a bully, because he does end up wanting to fuck with this heroine and mess with her because she makes him feel something. And he explains it as she makes his demons quiet. Like, he always wants to see pain in people. He always wants to do things and understand how people work and take them apart. But in his case, because he's a psychopath, he actually wants to take people apart. This isn't a, like, I want to play games with people and understand them. Like, he actually wants to do that. And it's caused, you know, a disconnect between him and his otherwise loving family because they're a bit worried about what he's going to do one day. They're all very sure he's going to kill one day, but what can you do? Until he actually does it, what do you do? And our heroine becomes in his sights. And the thing that made this really work for me is that this isn't a heroine who is unloved or abandoned. She is also from a legacy family in this series who loves her. She has she has like a grandfather who he's actually like a great uncle, but like he's her grandfather, and parents who love her. She has two brothers who love her. One of her brothers is kind of psychopath. I'll be interested to see him later on. So she is not someone who has no protection in her life. She could, even though he's threatened her and like wanting to do things to her, like she very well could tell her family what's happening and they would move heaven and earth for her. But the thing is, she kind of likes what he's doing to her. Now, that doesn't become clear right away. She's definitely an unreliable narrator. She's like, I don't want this. I don't want this. But the thing that he saw in her eyes, which again is not consent, he still did something she wasn't consenting to, but he saw something in her that spoke to him, and that's what made his demons quiet. And without like spoiling it, one of the things that made this compelling to me, because what doesn't work in a lot of bully romances, which again, I don't qualify this as a bully romance. Other people might be listed as one, but like, I don't call it that when it's a psychopath, because he's not like doing things to her to like fuck with her or be cruel. Like, he just wants to take her apart. Like, he just wants to understand her, you know? It's not just like, oh, you've pissed me off and I'm going to torture you. Like, he wants to torture her because he likes to take people apart. You know, I don't know. It's different to me. But anyway, she could get out of this. You know, she has people who will help, but she likes it a little bit. And so she lets herself stay in his sights. And she also isn't a weakling. There's that same kind of banter that I love in Untouchable. That's something I always talk about in that book, that so many other romances that try to do this fail, because to keep the heroine under the hero's thumb, she's a weakling. It's why I have problems with a lot of bully romances, because the hero's too mean and the heroine's too passive. Glendon is not passive. She isn't telling on him to make it stop, but she also challenges him to her detriment sometimes. And I loved it. So I gave this 5 stars. This may be a book that gets 6 stars later on, but for now it's a solid 5. I think why I didn't give it fully 5 stars is that it got just a little bit bonkers in some places where, like, one of the reasons I loved Untouchable is how, like, grounded it felt. But yeah, I gave this 5 stars. It's a 4 on the spice scale. There are lots of good kinks in this. There is breath play, voyeurism, like markings, like he likes to bite her and bruise her, spankings, and there is stalking, non-consensual situations, dubcon, all these things. So this was very intense. This won't be for everyone, but if you're one of the people who's always asking me, is there more Untouchable? It will get the job done, in my opinion. I think it will get the job done for you in some aspects, okay? Okay, then I read a nice little quickie here. I read Blood Moon by Gillian Graves. Thank you so much to Tiffany from Tiff Talks Pages. She gave me this for Christmas. And I wanted to read Gillian Graves' other book. I've read Titan. I really enjoyed it. This one is between a witch and a vampire, and the book is actually dedicated to all the vampires that the author loves. So like Pam and Eric and Spike and Drew. So I really like that. But these two, they have rival businesses, or in Hazel's mind, they're rivals. And the people that he like works for are actually fucking with the heroine. And she has a problem with that, and she blames Vlad for what's going on. But then there's like, in the beginning of this, there's a love potion, and they end up having this really sexy time together before they find out who the other person is. And then they're still drawn to each other, but they need to figure out how they're going to work together. So I won't say any more than that. It's only, I think it's 100 pages. Yeah, it's barely 100 pages, but I had a great time with this. I gave this one 4 stars. It was a 3 on the spice scale, and it had blood play and voyeurism in this one. Then I read an arc of The Duke Gets Even by Joanna Shupe. This was my first 6-star book of the year. And again, I gush about this in my vlog. I did a clip right after I finished it to my reaction, and I was crying. And this is my favorite Joanna Shupe. I've read 7 of her books, and this one was my favorite. I don't want to spoil anything because I want people to read this, but I'll tell you a few things that I loved that like made me give this 6 stars. So part of it too is that I really wanted the Duke to get a happily ever after. He has basically kind of tried to get with every woman previously because he is an English Duke in America. This book takes place during the Gilded Age, and his family, like, he needs an heiress, and he's tried and failed. He's been engaged and lost all these times. And so with this book, we backtrack just a little bit to a time when because in previous books we've seen Nellie and the Duke have this weird like tension. Well, it turns out that they actually met each other when neither of them knew who each other was. They met at like this moonlit, are they in the ocean or was it like a private beach? I don't know, but either way, they meet, and they were going to have a one-night stand, basically, but they do like kiss in the water. They are fascinated by the other person, and then she finds out the next day that he's trying to marry her friend. And so, rightly so, she's pretty pissed about it. Now, and his thing, like, he hadn't actually proposed yet, and so he has his reasons, but honestly, I didn't have a problem with him doing this, and I don't think you will either once you're getting into it, because we already know that everything's failed for him when you start this. Like, you know that none of the ladies he's tried to woo has it worked. And what else did I love? I loved how their banter grew, but like how they're never like cruel with their banter. Nellie, she's seen as kind of a ruined woman. She is definitely like, sexually free is the wrong word, but she definitely is very empowered. This is someone who takes control of keeping herself safe, and something that she tries to do is make sure that other women have options as well. This is something that will get her in trouble at different points. Now, for me, I liked the particular feminist message in here, and I hesitate to like use that term because I know it makes people nervous immediately. I can understand why some people won't like it, because there have been plenty of books where for me, I'm like, that's too much, I don't like it. But with this one, it was a very powerful message to me. However, and this was pointed out to me by a friend, like, just because I agree with the message and like it, it doesn't mean that it wasn't kind of ham-fisted into it. And that's a really great point, because again, there are a lot of romances, many new release historicals that I have slammed them because they've had a message that I didn't agree with and that I felt like it took over the story. I don't feel like that happened with this one, but I do want to put it out there that like I'm giving this a 6-star because it didn't bother me one bit, but I want to be honest with it. So what else I loved about this? I love Nellie's family. I'm very interested to read now Villain I'd Like to F, because Nellie has family that's connected with, like, not the mafia, but like the gangsters. Her mother was Irish. Her mother has passed. Her father just was obsessed with his wife. He's such a good dad. Like, oh, he's such a good dad in this. But she is still close with her Irish family, and I love scenes where she brings Andrew Lockwood like to see her family. And I believe that the reason I mentioned Villain I'd Like to F is in Villain I'd Like to F, Joanna Shupe has a gangster story in that one, and I'm wondering how it's connected or if it is. So don't spoil it for me if you've read it. I'm gonna read that, but it's gotta be, because it's the same like year. So I don't know if it's a family member or if it's one of the rival gangsters or whatever, but I would I can't tell you how much I would love if Joanna Shupe did a gangster series in Gilded Age in New York. Like, if she wrote us Peaky Blinders series, like, I really hope that's where we're going next, because her family was very vibrant in this, series. So I like that. But anyway, other things I liked. Once Lockwood decided to make Nellie his, he was so swoony. And this book does something that automatically brings it up for me, and that is the heroine has a grand gesture at the end. So I'm just going to say that. This is one of those that, and I always say, like, Joanna Shupe does this to me. It is not just Joanna Shupe. It is plenty of authors. One of the things I harp on here all the time is what the third act conflict is. And while this third act conflict was something you could see coming, the way that it played out was so just, it hit everything I wanted it to hit. And I told my friend who'd read it when I was done, I was like, she just grand gestured the fuck out of him. And I loved it. Okay, I loved it. So those are the things that I love. And also, I'm just more free with my 6 stars at the beginning of the year, because there's nothing else to compare it to. It's a fresh slate, and the Duke gets the #1 spot for the year so far, and I gave it 6 stars, and it was a 3.5 on the spice scale. Oh, I didn't even talk about that. Oh my god. So both of them are into a little bit of kinky kink. Like we're not talking kinky kink that's in the other things, but for the time and for these two, it was great. Like, they both like rough sex. Andrew likes to get it and to give it. Like, guys, there's a sex scene where he's like, I want you to scratch me and pull my hair. And I was like, oh my God, I love him. But she also likes it back. There is some bondage, spanking, and some great dirty talk. Also, there is a trigger warning for health issues. Andrew has a heart condition, and I thought that some discussions around that could be triggering, but I enjoyed it. So moving along, I enjoyed this so much. I'm so glad that I read this one early and didn't like drag it out and wait, because it was so special. It was so special, and I loved it. Okay, moving right along, and I will go about this one kind of quickly because I don't want to like drag this at all. This was actually from a viewer / author, so I think this was a great first attempt, but I didn't love quite what happened with this. So I read The Lake Effect by Elaine Ludington. I was actually surprised this won the poll. I thought people would pick Purple Stain, which is what it was up against. I want to try to be better about reading the physical books that get sent to me by authors who do that. Granted, when people solicit you to send something, like, there's no guarantee you're going to read it, but I want to try to do that because I know that it's people taking a risk, and yeah, but I'm also going to be honest. So I read this one, and I definitely had a lot of promise. Like, here was this little thing with me. This was a Grumpy Sunshine, Forced Proximity, Snowed In at the Lake. It says that this was new adult, and I just feel like, the author called it new adult so we wouldn't think it was too spicy, but the characters are 22 and 27. I don't know. I don't consider that new adult. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe the person labeling their book knows more than me. But the heroine was just graduating college, so maybe that was called it. But like, literally, she's a semester away from graduating. She's 22, and the hero is 27. And for unbeknownst reasons to them, they both get told they can stay at the same lake house. For her, it's her brother. For him, it's his cousin's new boyfriend, which is the same person, right? And they both get there. Neither of them want to be around people, and then they get snowed in and stuck together. So they end up, this is a cabin, so the power goes out, but they have wood. They get a ton of snow, and so they bring a mattress into the living room, and they're sharing that by the fire. The heroine has anxiety and a few other things. I don't know everything that she has, but she has a few things. And the first half of the book, when they're at the lake house, was really great. Then there are some miscommunications that lead to the second half of the book being all miscommunication. And in my opinion, they both had miscommunication, but the hero is the one who had to beg and plead and work and try to get her back. And while, like, I appreciated the anxiety rep and the other things that were going on, I think the heroine was also a little bit neurodivergent. I feel like that was blamed for so much, whereas at some point I would be like, you are a woman who can't make up your fucking mind, and I was annoyed. So the good last third of this, I skimmed through it, and also it said this was a slow burn 18 plus, but this was a 1 on the spice scale, and there wasn't anything until like 92%, which I'm like, I know that's not enough to call it a clean romance, but it almost was. So you know me. I don't need the smut if I'm getting the story being good. So this just, it was kind of a lot for me to handle. There was a lot with it. And then I just want to mention real quick, the other book that I picked up for it is Full Metal Alchemist. I've read the first 2 episodes of the first book, and I do plan to continue that. I don't want to rush that story because I know how many people love it, and I just wasn't, like, I enjoyed the first 2 stories, and then I was like, oh, I'm going to wait, and so I'm going to wait. I will plug away at that as I have the time, but I do not want to rush a story that so many people love so much. So next, I read a little novella by Lillian Lark. This was called Her Vigilante. You may like this book if you like the Mindfuck series. This one is a standalone, though. It's an FBI agent and a serial killer. But he's a serial killer who, like, kills dirty cops. But he's become more and more of a vigilante who's spiraling out of control. And a heroine is an FBI agent who gets sent to handle him. But she has both her and her partner. Her partner is a much older FBI agent. They both have their vices that involve him. For him, it's alcohol, and for her, it is risky sex. So when things are tough with work, she likes to go to a bar and blow somebody in a bathroom and never know their name. And what would you know? She does that with someone, and then when she comes into work the next day, he is a special investigator assigned to the case. And so awkwardness ensues. And then there is a vigilante who's doing the killing and everything. So I enjoyed this quite a bit. I listened to the audiobook. The audiobook was only 4 hours long, and I basically listened to it while I was shopping at Costco, and it was great. And yeah, I don't want to spoil anything about that one. That one has the trigger warnings of, like you said, like dangerous sex, unprotected sex with strangers, bondage a little bit, and then the trigger warning, there is some kidnapping, and I mean, there's a serial killer, so there's a little bit of violence going on, right? Then I finally finished volume 4 of Fire in His Fingertips. So I started this volume back when I like read volume 3, and then it was just on my manga shelf. But I finished this one. This is about Ro and Suma. They're friends to lovers. These are very spicy. However, I had forgotten that the other ones weren't censored, because this one all of a sudden is censored now, which doesn't really make sense to me, because these are like, this is an erotic manga, like from Ghost Ship, like it is very erotic, and all of a sudden we were getting glowing peens now, and I was very sad about that. However, I really love how Suma and Ro's relationship has progressed, and there was a bit of a possible threat to their relationship, because Rio's ex Ray is in the picture, and he asked her to be his fake girlfriend to like get back at his ex, but Suma doesn't really like that, so we have that to deal with. So I gave this one 4 stars because I did like it better than the third one, but I also didn't love that we all of a sudden were now blurring things in this one. I want to know like why that decision was made with this. I was disappointed. But this was a 2 on the spice scale. There's a kink of voyeurism in this one. Ro really likes people to hear them doing things. And as always, there's a bit of dubcon, because he definitely pressures her a lot, even though she likes it. So I love that. Okay, then I read another fic. I read Hinge of Fate by Ramos. This one was recommended in my book rec form. And this one was very interesting because it started with a very dark premise, but the book wasn't actually that dark. It ended up being a pretty sweet romance. So this was another Snape and Hermione. Apparently that was the fix of the week. I need to change it up a little bit, I think. But what happens is it starts with Hermione going to the hospital ward to have a checkup, and she discovers she's pregnant, and then Dumbledore gets called in, and she's like, I don't know how I'm pregnant. I haven't had sex with Ron yet. In fact, the night we were going to have sex, we threw a fit. Now, there's a whole bunch of like complicated reason. Like, she had gotten a birth control potion, and it was like on her record that she had picked it up, which let's not keep records of when people pick things up. But so the reason for what I'm about to explain is that the adults thought she couldn't get pregnant because she had taken this birth control potion, because she was planning to have consensual sex with Ron, and they ended up breaking up that night. And she was on her own in Hogsmeade. It was at Hogsmeade, yeah. And she got attacked by Death Eaters. And so they had seen on her record that she'd had this potion, but she had never taken it. And then she was raped. And so when a memory charm was put on her to help her block out what had happened, they were like, well, she shouldn't have any ill effects from this because she'd already taken a birth control potion. It should be fine, but she didn't. So when she turns up pregnant, not only does she not remember her assault, but she's like, how am I pregnant? And it just so happens that Severus Snape has been slowly being healed because he has been severely beaten and hurt. And what happened is that Lucius and the Death Eaters put an imperious curse on Snape and forced him to rape Hermione. And so we are told this in the beginning, and then later on, and with copious trigger warnings, there is a chapter where we see what happened, and we see how hard Snape was fighting, and the fact that he was willing to let them kill him and let the Imperious Curse kill him rather than do this. Like, but once all this is found out, like, Snape just, like, wants to die because of it. But Hermione ends up spending a lot of time with him because she can't do a lot of her regular, like, schoolwork because there's certain things you're not allowed to do when you're pregnant. And so she ends up working on special projects. And I think she's doing, like, a senior thesis type thing. I'm not sure when it is. Like, it's not that, but because she's not at college. But she ends up working with him a lot and getting to know him. And then this is their romance. So I, of course, really enjoyed this one as well. So this was a 4-star for me. It really kind of drug on in the second part of it. Like, this one was 500 plus pages and it didn't need to be that long, in my opinion. So yeah, I gave this one 4 stars and it was a 2 on the spice scale. And obviously the trigger warning is the rape, and honestly a mutual rape because Snape is being forced to do this and Hermione's the one taking, like, the brunt of that. But anytime you're being forced to have sex, that's rape, whether you're a man or a woman. So they both have a lot of trauma from this. Okay, I also read Penalty Kill by Genevieve Chambly. This was one of the books that I was reading for, this was recommended by one of you guys, and it was on my trope challenge board, and I picked this one for a sports romance. This was also an MM romance between a hockey player, Timothy, and Riker, who is an agent, and right now Timothy he is, like, suspected of murder, possibly. His parents have died or been killed, so there's trigger warnings for that. And then there's a bunch of other stuff going on. I gotta tell you, I ended up skimming a lot of this. I didn't really care for Timothy. The romance was so slow burn. Oh my god, it was so slow burn. And it ended up only being a 2 on my spice scale. For all of Timothy's dirty talking, this was painfully slow. So I was not engaged by these characters. I didn't really fall for this. I don't want to rag on and on about it, but it didn't work for me. It didn't work for me. I gave it 3 stars, 2 on the spice scale. There is a content warning of grief and loss of parents, but I just wasn't interested in this. Then I read Where Waves Break by Julia Wolf. This was a new release. This one is part of her, one of her series. Dang it, I can't remember the name of the series. But this is technically book 4 in a series, but it can read as a standalone. You'll see all the other couples who are together now, but this works pretty well as a standalone. And this was a Grumpy Sunshine nanny romance. He's an ex-rock star, and he gets asked to be a, like, part-time drummer for this group that is an established group. Unrequited. I think there's Unrequited, and then there's another group too. And he has a 4-year-old son, and he needs someone to watch his son while he's there. And the sister of one of the band members, she has been a nanny before for the people's kids, and so she helps watch his kid and her nephew. But our hero is very protective, and he's very nervous about anyone watching his son that isn't him. So he definitely gets off on the wrong foot with our heroine, assuming things about her, barking at her a lot. But I mean, that's part of the charm of a Grumpy Sunshine, right? Also, early on, there is a thing where she ends up seeing him in the shower and she doesn't leave right away. And then when he catches her, she leaves and he chases her down. He's like, "What the fuck are you doing watching me in the shower?" And she falls to her knees and apologizes. Now, this immediately gets him pretty hot, and he's like, wow, this woman has some submissive tendencies, but they're only going to be at this place for a week, and he's like, she's really young. She's not that young. She's 26. But he's like, I can't do this. But he says, you're forgiven. You're a good girl. And then he leaves because he's like, no, the temptation's too great. So then later on, he goes back to his regular life, and his son... He's trying to watch his son and do his job, which he's also a mechanic. So guys, he's doubled up on this. He's a drummer for a band and he's a mechanic when he's home. And he realizes he needs a nanny for a while. So because his son loved June so much, I haven't even said their names, Diego and June, he asked her to come and be his, like, live-in nanny for a while. And he's like, we can forget about what happened. Like, just come and be here. And so she's like, okay, I will. And then she moves in with him, and we begin this slow burn between the two of them. I love this. This did have some DNS, bondage, praise. And what I really loved is this wasn't a teach me book. When we get around to there being sexy time between these two, I mean, he already knows she has submissive tendencies, but she's not a noob. She's a woman who knows herself. She knows what she likes. She knows which BDSM thing she likes. And he's just like, oh my God, I've been so blessed. Like, this woman knows all the things. So I really liked that too, because yeah, she has experimented and she knows what she likes. And she doesn't need him to tell her that, but they definitely experiment some things together. And I really love that. So yeah, this one had a third act conflict that I felt kind of came out of nowhere. However, once it was laid out, I was like, okay, I see what the seeds of this were. And it resolved in a pretty good way, but I did dock a little bit from it because I feel like Julia Wolf should have been like planting those things in a little bit sooner instead of me having to retroactively be like, oh, I saw those. I don't know. That's a point of opinion. So I gave this one 4.5 stars, and it was a 3.5 on my spice scale. So quite nice, quite nice. And then the last book that I finished, which I just finished last night, and was excellent, is I read Restore Me. So I've been seeing a lot of my friends read this one. The first person I heard about, of course, was Big Sis read this book. It was one of her favorites of 2022. Also, Caitlin sent me this one as a Christmas gift, and I ended up like kind of sort of annotating this. Like I didn't like mean to, but there was just a really lot of powerful things in this book. So this book is about a widow named Sloane, and Dominic Alexander is her dead husband's best friend, and he's always hated her, and they end up needing to work on a project together. I think he's like the architect or whatever, and she has something, she's like the design, I don't know what their jobs were, but they end up collabing together on a job, and he's always seemed to hate her, but of course there's more to it than that. He's very much kept this distance between them because he feels very drawn to her. Now, she is entering a time of life where her husband's been gone for a few years, and she's feeling very like starved for affection, and her therapist explains that she's probably dealing with touch hunger, and she needs to start getting her needs met. So she's going to start trying and going on dates, but to find someone that she trusts to start being intimate with again when she hasn't been intimate with anyone but her husband is a lot. And when Dominic finds out about this, not only is he very possessive that she hasn't seen him be before, but he's like, use me. I'll be the one who helps you because you can trust me, and I'll help build you back up to this. And she agrees, but she also says, we're only going to do this until the end of our project, which is 8 weeks. And he doesn't like that idea because here's the thing. He's actually been obsessed with her since before she ever met his best friend. But she doesn't remember that. And so all these years, he's kept himself apart from her so that like she could have this happy life with his best friend. And I won't go too deep into that. There are more to that than I can say in an easy sentence. But this is a man who is ready to worship this woman, and he plans to use this 8 weeks that she's giving him to make her as obsessed with him as he is with her. And boy, does he go about it. I will tell you that nothing about Dominic do I have a problem with. I understand why he's people's book boyfriends. He may be one of my book boyfriends when we come back to this at the end of 2023. The thing that made this one a 4.5 for me and made it not a favorite is that he is working so hard. He's giving her what she needs. He is perfect, okay? He's perfect. He's dirty talking. He's sexy. He knows how to use his hands and his mouth and his face and like all the things, and just they have this great chemistry and all these things. But there's a point where he messes up a little bit. And the heroine is then just like, nope, it was never going to work. Nope. And he has to fight so hard in the third act to get her back from the one thing that he's done wrong. And she's been so resistant all this time. And I just didn't like that the hero had to work so hard. And in the same way that at the beginning of this wrap up, I talked about how the Duke gets even. He was trying so hard, and then the heroine did a grand gesture to prove that she's in. I wanted Sloane to do the grand gesture because he he is so good this whole book, and then she is just like, nope, it's not going to work because of this reason. And then he has to do boom, boom, boom to like win her back. And I was like, no, girl, you need to show that you're putting the skin in. And I feel like she didn't. So it doesn't wash away everything I loved about this book. And I don't think that it would for you either. Like, there's so many great revelations and their relationship gets built so well. So it didn't like swipe it all away by any means. But it's just that thing that like is a difference between a 4.5 and like a 5 or a 6-star book for me, because if she had put in the same amount of skin in it as he did, this would have blown me away. But those are the things for me where like I need both people. For it to be a 6-star for me, I need both people. So I don't want to disparage this book or turn anyone away from it. It was beautiful. It's emotional, but it didn't like break me either. And I mean that in a good way, right? Like, it didn't just crumble me into pieces. Like, it was uplifting and beautiful about, like the author says, like an enemies to lovers romance about forbidden relationships and love after loss. Like, this one really was about love after loss, and it wasn't as gut-wrenching as some are. And I think that that's good, because I think that the gut-wrenching part can scare a lot of people away. And though you'll see a lot of people speaking very emotionally about this book, which is well-deserved, it also isn't like going to destroy everything and like kill you. You know what I mean? Like, it was just beautiful. So anyway, all that, I gave this a 4.5 star. It was a 4 on the spice scale. We have some great kinky times. There's edging, praise, there is a little bit of bondage, and then there are trigger warnings. There's discussion of a previous miscarriage, obviously the loss of the husband and grief, and a toxic mother-daughter relationship. So I'll put that in there. So there you go. Those are the 12 books that I read during the first week of January. Welcome to a new year, everyone. Please make sure you've liked this video and subscribe. Check out my Patreon or channel membership if you'd like to support what I do here. It takes everybody to keep this going. Tax season is upon us, and I gotta tell you, it's terrifying. It's terrifying as a small business owner, as anyone will know who does that. So all help is appreciated to keep it going here. So thank you so much for watching, friends, and I'll see you next time. Bye.